Hello, everyone, and welcome to the February edition of Techspert Talks. I'm Troy Rainey, and I'll be your host for today's session. Today's presentation is Advanced ClickSense System Monitoring with our own Mario Pietre. Mario, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Great to be hosting one of these webinars again together with my good pal Troy. I've been at Qlik now 10 years, celebrating 10 years this summer. I've been focused on ClickSense Enterprise on Windows from the very beginning. I like big, complex cases with large environments, with a lot of resources and a lot of performance problems. There's always something interesting to learn. Playing around with self-hosting projects is one of my favorite ways to do that. One way that I discovered Zabbix, but late last year, I also worked with a couple of customers that were using this to monitor their ClickSense environments. And I thought that was a really, really cool idea. It's very easy to set up, like we will see in a few minutes. And I'm
Yeah,
very excited to show this to you all.
I appreciate you sharing. So today, Mario is going to be introducing us to the Zabbix monitoring tool. He's going to walk us through a demonstration of how to set that up using Docker Compose. We're going to take a look at some templates for ClickSense installations, specifically ones that Mario has built and how you can apply others. And we're talking about some custom monitoring. To begin with, Mario, what is the Zabbix monitoring tool and why is this attractive versus the out-of-the-box operations monitor?
That's a great way to start, I think. So Zabbix is a great collection of monitoring tools and techniques. The biggest advantage that you would get with a tool like this is near real-time data monitoring and analytics.
Okay.
The metrics from the system that you would get through something like the operations monitor is always going to be lagging with the frequency of your reload task. While Zabbix is able to send performance metrics via a small little agent we are going to install in our ClickSense servers and send that over to a centralized location for analysis in near real time. And the frequency of these monitors you can customize. The advantage of Zabbix itself is that it is multi-platform. You can run it in any number of ways, including on very, very small powered computers like a Raspberry Pi, all the way up to gigantic cloud deployments. So if you're using GCP, there are templates for that. If you're using AWS, there are templates for that. If you want to self-host it in your organization, there are many different ways that you can do that, including the one that we will show today using Docker Compose.
So can you tell us about the environment you're going to be demonstrating for us today when you're setting up that Zabbix monitor?
Of course. Very simple layout. We have a 3-node multi-node setup with a dedicated node for scheduler and a dedicated node for application consumption. So our users will be coming into the system using myclick.domain.local. This will be directed to Qlik server 3, which is acting as our main proxy, and it is load balancing right now against itself only.
And what's going on in the back end there?
Our central node that is talking to the database and sending tasks to our dedicated scheduler node. Some dotted lines go into the Zabbix box. This is to indicate performance metrics being sent over to the Zabbix server using the Zabbix agent.
Yeah, so this is a pretty basic multi-node ClickSense setup, just so I understand. We got the central node, it's our server 1, server 2 is the scheduler, and server 3 is our proxy. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Zabbix server is going to be separate from all that, but on each of these ClickSense machines, we're going to install a Zabbix agent that will help send those performance metrics back and forth to the server. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Well, where do we find information about setting this up?
All right. Here we have their website. From here, we can go to Get Zabbix.
All right.
And this gives us a selection of different deployments.
Which one of these will we be starting with?
We will be doing it using containers.
Okay.
With Docker Compose, it points us to the main documentation. Zabbix offer a number of Compose YAML files that makes deployment very, very easy and very easy to customize.
Okay, so it's the documentation has all the commands that are kind of necessary to get started. That's great.
The other main requisite to get this running is, of course, to have Docker Engine running on your machine. Here are the instructions on configuring Docker Engine on Ubuntu.
Okay, and there are other ways to deploy it, but this is the server type we'll be using today. And I'll provide a link to this documentation, of course. Are Ubuntu and Docker Compose all open source and free?
They all are, including Zabbix.
That's great. Okay, so what's our next step then?
The first step, after we've confirmed that the Docker engine is running, I have a Windows terminal window here. Great. And the instructions on the left.
And the PowerShell on the right, that's connecting to the Ubuntu Linux box where we're going to set up the Zabbix server?
Yep, and then use Docker Compose to spin up the stack.
So you're logged in.
We don't have anything.
And I'm not used to Linux. How can we tell that?
We list with ls.
Ah, thank you.
Let's clear the screen. First, we will copy our git clone command, paste, enter, and this will clone the repository inside that folder. We'll list again.
So the Zabbix folder's been created with all those files we need. I'm guessing there's something in here we need to configure?
That's right. We need to make sure that this bluish looking compose.yaml symbolic link, and that is indicated by the fact that it has an at the end, is pointing to the right template.
What's it pointing to now?
We can do ls-la, but we will list just that file. If I make this part a little bit bigger now, compose.yaml is pointing to docker-compose v3 alpine mysql latest.
So how do we change this to point where we want it?
So the first step is to unlink the compose.yaml file.
Okay, so it's no longer pointing to those other files.
That's right. And now, having unlinked it, we can see that compose.yaml is no longer present in our file list.
So how do we create the new symbolic link?
With the ln command.
Okay.
Adding a -s makes it symbolic. So first we need our target file, docker compose, and then we will use the Ubuntu-based images with Postgres and the latest YAML file. And then we will point this to compose.yaml. So now if we list the contents again, we have this file here again.
So you reestablished that symbolic link to the correct file.
Yes. And we can confirm that listing the content so we can see it's pointing to the right one. So at this point, there is only one other thing that I would like to mention. A Zabbix server will spin up a graphical interface listening on ports 80 and 443 by default.
So how do we change those ports if we need to?
By modifying the files inside the mvars folder. Most of these files will begin with a dot. This makes them hidden. You will have to use a slightly different ls command to see them all. So first, let's change into the mvars folder. Once we say show me everything, we have a bunch of other files.
So those are a bunch of hidden files in that folder.
Yes.
Okay.
You can change the default Postgres username and password. Cat shows file contents, and you can see that is just defined to Zabbix. Username is also Zabbix.
Right now, the password and username are both Zabbix.
Yes, for the Zabbix server to talk to the database. So here, I would just like to make one small edit with nano inside the .env_web file.
Okay.
We are going to edit the third line called Zabbix server name to STT live demo, Control O, save. All right, we are ready to start it up.
You rename the name of the Zabbix server. Is that what you've done?
Yes, the name of the Zabbix server as it will be shown on the web UI.
Okay.
Full screen this. If you just run docker compose, here is a list. What we want is to create and start containers. So we will use up in detached mode, and then 2 ampersands to make sure that the previous command finishes correctly. And if that does, we will attach to the logs. Follow since how far back in time to attach to those logs. Are you ready, Troy?
I'm ready. Let's see some action here.
All right. Let's fire it up. Once you start seeing Zabbix agent items being mentioned, that means the server is up and running.
How do we log into the user interface?
All right. So we will need to grab a browser and head over to our Ubuntu server. The default credentials are admin with a capital A and then Zabbix all lowercase. This is what you will be presented with the very first time you log in. This is your general dashboard. You can see how many hosts are available, and it will consider itself unavailable because we haven't installed the Zabbix agent on this server.
So would the next step be to install those Zabbix agents on each node?
That's right. Let's go ahead and do that on one of them.
Which one do we start with, the central node?
Let's start with the central node.
Okay.
And here you can see all of the different operating systems they support. We will just install it as a service on our Windows box. Download the agent file.
All right. Okay, so there's the agent installer.
That's right. It installs like just any other piece of software, but we have to give it a couple of crucial details.
Okay.
And here we have to tell the Zabbix server how this server will be called and advertised as. Whatever value we use in here can be found via DNS from the Zabbix server. And we define the host inside the Zabbix server using the same name.
So do you recommend that be a fully qualified domain name or IP address?
I think fully qualified domain name works well. IP address is also great. In this case, our fully qualified domain name, we need to tell the Zabbix agent where it can send its telemetry.
Okay.
And that, in our case, is on Ubuntu 0.1. The agent listen port, you can change it, but on the Zabbix server side, you will have to match the port, the same as with the host name.
Okay.
I like to check this box in case I need to interact with the service from the command line. That's it. If we check the list of our services, we have Zabbix agent. This server is ready to send telemetry to Zabbix server.
Okay, we've got all the Zabbix agents installed, one on each QlikSense node. How do we configure those to communicate with the Zabbix server?
So from here, go to data collection, we go to hosts. There is always going to be the Zabbix server itself.
Listed as red in availability. Is that because it doesn't have an agent installed on itself?
Right, it's missing the agent.
I like the hovering gives you more information.
Mhm.
Okay, so how do we add a new agent?
We come up here to create host. First,
Okay.
the host name, the same as the one you used installing the agents. We will start with a central node, click server1.domain.local, the visible name, QS central.
Okay.
And because this is a Windows server, and link it to the Windows Server template by Zabbix agent.
Sort
This
of.
will give us a number of items already from the operating system level.
All right.
Next is to link this new host to a host group, to put them together in a bucket, let's say, so that you can find them easier.
That makes sense. If you don't know exactly what term to enter here, can you hit the select button?
Yeah, perfect. This will give you a list of all of the host groups that are predefined. You can create your own virtual machines is perfect for us. The last thing before we can add the server is to define how will this collector get the telemetry. So we need to create an agent interface. We will put the same host name as we've defined during the agent installation, and we will switch to this to DNS. We can give it a quick description, and we are ready to add it.
All right.
Okay.
And that's starting to communicate with that agent and
Mhm.
establish that connection.
Yep. So let's go and do the same for the other two hosts. And here's a quick way that you can reuse a host to define new ones.
Yeah.
We'll click on the host. We'll click on the clone button and then change a few things. First, the host name, scheduler. It already inherited everything else, but we of course need to change the interface to point to server 2.
And change the description.
Click add. Let's go do the same for our consumer node on server 3. Change the host name, change the visible name. We need to change the DNS name to point to the right server, the description, and add.
Yeah, so you've got 3 agents installed, one on each node. And currently they're using just a basic Windows template because they are Windows machines.
Mhm.
But you mentioned you've built some Qlik-specific templates. How can we apply those?
You will have a download link for these templates in the supporting article.
Okay, so you've already downloaded that?
That's right. Let's go ahead and import our template. In data collection, templates,
Nice.
there's a lot of them. It gives you the ability to create a template or import. We'll go ahead and import. We'll select our file. It's the same file that you'll download from the article. Click import. It's going to give us an exploded view of everything that we are bringing in. One template group with 4 templates, all of these individual items, some pre-built dashboards and graphs.
And it looked like you set this up to have them be kind of node specific.
That's right. Okay, ready to import. Type in Qlik in the template groups. We'll apply the filter.
Okay.
And these are the templates that we brought in. You have this concept of linked items. So a template can be linked to multiple hosts. It can contain multiple items, different triggers, graphs, dashboards. If you have a template group that contains multiple templates, you search for that group. If you have a host group, you can do that by searching here. So we click on this little 3. It's going to take us to a host view with just those nodes, excluding the Zabbix server itself. We are ready to link these servers to these new templates that we brought in.
Is there a way to apply the same templates to multiple nodes at once?
Indeed, there is. So we will use the mass update function. We'll select all of our nodes in the virtual machines host group and click on mass update. So we want to link templates. Click on select, mark them all in here, and see it added all of these. And we just click update. And they're all going to get these items all in one go. We go to monitoring, we will have more dashboards. I spent some time building these to make sure that reviewing performance metrics across servers is relatively easy, but of course these can be extended. Now we have some dashboards. So file systems, network interfaces, and system performance comes from our Windows template.
Okay.
Everything else comes from the Qlik-specific template that we just imported.
Hey, Mario, do you have something that has already been collecting metrics for a bit so that there's more telemetry to look at?
We sure do. We're going to show you the one that we cooked earlier.
Okay, so this Zabbix server has been monitoring a similar QlikSense environment, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But this has been running for a number of days now. This new dashboard reports problems. We supposedly have a problem here on consumer 1. We will click on update. And this gives you a ticketing system panel to see exactly how these problems are being dealt with. We don't care about this one. It's just making sure that your Google Chrome is up to date.
Oh, I see those pop-ups all the time.
Yeah. Change the severity to just information. And then we will suppress these messages indefinitely. And we will also tag them as acknowledged. We have other servers that are reporting problems. So you can set up triggers here, for example, to alert you if any of the services are running high in consumption, if any of them have stopped working or responding. We see that all of our hosts are available. We are getting some engine saturation metric from the engine health check endpoint.
So false means it's not saturated, and that's good.
That's right. That is
Okay.
good. We are also getting some memory usage and consumption from each node. You can select the date range.
I like that if you zoom in on one, it reflects the
Mhm.
same time frame across the other nodes.
Yep. And that is very useful. We can go in here into our monitoring section and look at one of the dashboards for one of our services, last 2 days, for example.
And what's the
And
gray versus white in those bars?
gray means outside of office hours. White means inside office hours. And you can
Oh,
customize
nice.
how these are reflected. It's a great visual aid to help you understand when something happened. If I go to my consumer node, where I have been playing around with some applications,
Mm-hmm.
and go into the same dashboard, repository service, here we go. Here we can see a little bit more data. Look at last 2 days, for example. There we are.
So all that activity we're looking at, that's users logging in, opening apps, and we can see how that.
The system running reloads and a number of things. We can switch to the engine.
And the engine is just kind of what's running in the background, making sure that those apps are working properly
Yep,
and
that's
reloading.
right.
Is there any additional configuration that's necessary to get all of these metrics from the engine service?
The template itself will need to be customized. In here, we will look at allocated memory. So we have the full URL here. The host name value is dynamic, but the virtual proxy prefix that you use to connect to the engine health check endpoint is not. This part you will need to modify.
And where can you see that setting on QlikSense?
A familiar view for everyone. We'll go into virtual proxies. And here you see I have these 3 virtual proxies set up, each pointing to the different nodes. So let's look at the first one, which is linked to the central node.
So whatever is in that prefix field is what you need to add.
That's it. The only thing that I've done here is to always anonymous user, so to not allow any kind of authenticated traffic. And we have linked it to the proxy service in question. So my recommendation is to set up a completely separate, unique to each server virtual proxy that is only used for telemetry, and then use that in Zabbix to monitor this endpoint.
Okay, so you recommend going into the QMC, setting up a unique virtual proxy for each node so that it can send that information cleanly to the Zabbix server.
That's right. And we can confirm that by checking load balancing and making sure that only one server, the one associated with this particular virtual proxy, is responding.
Okay.
And the problem comes here because this round robins by default.
Right. Because of load balancing, you need that to know from which service the metrics are coming from.
That's right.
So as long as we get that set up, a separate virtual proxy for each node, and go in and make sure that the prefix is matching what's listed in the URL for each of those metrics.
Yep,
Okay.
that's right. That's right.
Well, that makes sense.
So the last part that you may want to do once all of these items are created, all the templates have been imported and have been collecting data for a little bit, is to create your own dashboard.
Yeah, please. How would you do that?
When you log in, you will be presented with either this list or directly with this Zabbix server template. We'll create a new one. We'll create a new dashboard, apply that. We have our first page, pick a location, and start creating objects. We are just bringing in widgets, how Zabbix calls these dashboards, widgets that we've already created. A simple graph will give this a name, and then in items, it will list all of the items that are associated with that particular node.
These items, these are visualizations?
Yes, these are essentially performance counters that you can use to build your graphs. We will search for performance counters graph that is predefined. So we will grab this one.
Oh, yeah,
It's
you
not-
can set it up so you have them side by side.
And we will go ahead and add a new one. We will do scheduler 1 performance counters and expand this as well so that you can see the legend. And then add another one for our third server. resize this. You can see fairly easy to work with. And once we
Okay.
save this, it will be in our general view. And look at its performance counters.
Well, that was easy to quickly put together and it was super responsive.
Hmm. And putting together graphs based on your self-defined performance counters is also very easy.
Okay, now it's time for Q&A. Please submit your questions to the Q&A panel to the left side of your On24 console. Several questions have already come in, so I'll just read them from the top. First question. Is it possible to run Zabbix from a separate Windows machine in the same domain as QlikSense, or does this have to be set up with Docker?
You can absolutely host it on a server that is close to your Qlik ecosystem. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be a Linux box. So if we go to zabbix.com, Zabbix packages, you will see here all of the OSs that are supported.
Fantastic. I don't see Windows on that list.
You
So
can use
there's
it.
certainly a
You
lot
can
of
use third-party
options.
cloud. The agents are multi-platform.
Okay,
You can also grab it as an appliance, for example. Appliances are typically virtual machine images in different formats that you can download and run in your virtual machine hosting platform. Hyper-V, VMware, a raw image.
yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the next question. Is this monitoring system supported by Qlik?
It depends on what you mean supported.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone in professional services would be able to help you set it up, but as you saw, setup itself is very simple. When it comes to configuring and extending using the templates that we showed you today is a great place to start.
Next question. Would it be possible to monitor the capacity or usage of data with this tool?
I mean, you can make it monitor any kind of metrics that you want. For example, in the case of Qlik Cloud, if you want to build a Zabbix dashboard based on information that those administration APIs provide, you can absolutely do that, even using the HTTP agent example that we just showed. There isn't much of a limit as to what you can monitor with this platform, but you have to put intent behind it. And when it comes to actual capacity consumption by QlikSense, again, because this is a server-focused monitoring solution, it doesn't really look super deep into what QlikSense as a product does. That's what we have the monitoring apps for. So things like the licenses app or capacity consumption app can show you those metrics in a lot greater detail than you could see in Zabbix, I think.
Well, that makes sense because it's really
Yeah,
monitoring Sense's impact on the machine more than what Sense is
yeah,
doing. Okay,
exactly. Zabbix doesn't do governance. It does observability and monitoring and alerting and all of the things that have to do with the hardware that you're running the product on.
great. Next question. How much do the installed Zabbix agents affect performance on each node?
I've not seen any impact in my testing. Of course, this also will always be correlated to the amount of items that you are trying to extract from any given node. But because these probes are essentially relying on signals sent by Windows itself, performance monitor counters are already running in the background in Windows. We are just tapping into that and sending little packets over the network. You can inspect the traffic if you want to learn more, but I've not seen any kind of negative impact from having this.
Next question. Could this be modified to pick up things like the size of bookmarks within an app?
You could probably build some kind of performance counter or monitor using our documented APIs to extract this information on a per app basis and create some discovery rules, for example, as part of these templates that could scan through the QRS, identify all of the apps. So we would give you a list of apps and maybe dig into the apps themselves and give you a list of bookmarks. But we have QlikSense native applications much better suited at doing that sort of, let's say, performance check-in with certain applications.
Technically possible, but not really
Mhm.
the best tool for it.
Yeah,
All right, next question. Could this be used to monitor the amount of data that the server uses?
absolutely. I think one of the quickest ways that you can do that is just by looking at transfer volumes using the built-in networking related templates that are in Zabbix.
Okay, great. Next question. Is it possible to not only see what apps are open, but what sheets and objects are used?
Again, that goes down to product-specific telemetry
Hmm.
and this level of, let's say, user tracking and user-based analytics are, I think, out of scope for Zabbix. You could use the auditing sessions, licenses, monitoring apps to kind of build a picture of what your users are doing.
Great, that's a good suggestion.
Mhm.
Next question. Is there something like this for Qlik Cloud Analytics?
Qlik being a cloud native platform already has all of this metrics and observability built around it because we, Qlik, have to care about what all of those resources are doing. So when it comes to specific machine monitoring, it's not your concern as a customer, but we have these metrics, of course. What you can do with Zabbix against cloud is to extract information based on your own tenant. And what you can do with that, it will all come from the API documentation. But ultimately, you'll be getting the truth and the information from the Qlik Cloud Management Console and not Zabbix.
That makes sense. Okay, just a couple more questions. Would this work similarly for a multi-node QlikView system?
It sure can. The performance counters won't be the same, but you can use the pre-built ones where we are extracting information from the process level performance metrics that Microsoft produces to look at things like performance data for QlikView engine, for example, or a QlikView server. But yes, from a Windows perspective, absolutely. You can start just by aggregating the Windows specific performance data, and that will be very useful to have in a central place.
Great. And the next two questions are probably a little related. Does this read or monitor the data that the apps use?
No, it does not. Yeah, this is all protected by the engine or the client to engine communications.
And the last question we have time for today, is it possible for this to measure the response time? For example, how long it takes to open an app?
Response time, yes. How long it takes to open an app fully end to end, that part is a little bit more complicated. If you have ever spent any time in DevTools while using our product on premise, you would have seen hundreds of requests flying around for different types of content, including WebSocket communications. In order for you to understand how long the full page took to load, you have to use a test mechanism that acts or impersonates a real user. Zabbix has a couple of different ways of doing this. You can use the HTTP agent to call an endpoint and get back some performance data. You can use web monitoring to get the same. So you point it at a URL, it will try to open it, and I will talk about how in just a second. So it will try to open it and it will give you how many milliseconds did it take to get the HTTP response code back, and how much bandwidth was it used to produce that result, right? But that does not reflect the full process of loading up the ClickSense Hub and then loading up an application. It is just a simple query. And what it does in the background is essentially a get web request or a curl, using curl to call a specific endpoint. From there, you can extend this test and use something like Selenium Web Client on top, and Zabbix supports this as well, which I think is very, very cool, where you can define a Selenium scenario. That these are very similar to our own scalability tool scenarios, where you instruct a headless Chrome browser to act as a real user and follow through all of the clicks, wait for all the page contents to load up. And these tests actually can give you back screenshots of every step, as long as performance metrics for the whole navigation flow. And they can be very complicated. They can be just a simple step like open the hub and tell me how long it took, or do all of this bunch of interactions with the product and then get a sliced view with individual screenshots.
Wow.
This is more advanced setup.
Yeah.
It requires building it on top of other products that we didn't get to talk today, like Selenium and Chromium Web Detached and things like that. The documentation is very, very good. There are quite a few examples out there on how to do this, to scrape different websites, just to navigate through our own. But the thing that makes this a little bit complicated is that we are inherently a very secure platform. Everything is governed. All of these web requests have to be authorized by something. So it's not quite as simple as pointing it to google.com and making a web search and seeing how long that took.
Yeah.
Right? You have to make sure that you pass in all of the user headers, that you essentially define the scenario to act as a proper end user. Once you've done that, though, the results can be quite spectacular.
Very cool. Well, Mario, thank you so much for showing us how this tool works, its capabilities, its possibilities, and obviously you could do some pretty advanced applications with it. So that's nice to know.
Yeah, and we've only scratched the surface as to what Zabbix as a monitoring platform can do for you. I really encourage you to go through that documentation, play around with it, and see what kind of value it can bring to your IT org.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this session. And special thanks to Mario for presenting. We always appreciate getting experts like Mario to share with us. Here's our legal disclaimer. And thank you once again. Have a great rest of your day.